Do you see whole genome sequencing becoming more important for genealogy in the future, including for deep autosomal matching? I think it will be important. I think it's possible that we may see some of these, some of the general direct-to-consumer ancestry tests going a whole genome sequence route of adding that to their repertoire. Um, so family tree DNA, I think, would probably be the first if any of them do it, especially just because with their gene by gene lab, they already kind of have a lot of stuff online. I think they do whole genome sequencing, but it's only limited to private clients, not consumer clients. So yeah, I think a lot of people will possibly go that route. I don't necessarily see it being that much more useful for the genealogy side of things, just because, the 600,000 to 700,000 SNPs that they're testing in these tests were chosen because these are the variable SNPs. These are the ones where we see variation between humans, so we can actually tell it. Where, in reality, we always say, oh yeah, I share 50% of my DNA with my parents and blah, blah, blah. But what we're really saying is 50% of the DNA that is the variable DNA. Where in reality, I think people hear this all the time, humans are, I think it's supposed to be about 99% the same DNA wise. And maybe it's changed or something, but that's why they're testing these DNA markers. So when you do whole genome, they're testing everything, but you're not going to get a whole lot more information. And it could be helpful, if everyone does whole genome sequencing and they do autosomal SNP comparisons in databases for genetic genealogy like they do now. Just because, the more that you test of the variable SNPs, the better. And, I say it all the time, not all the tests test all of the same SNPs. So like if you've tested at multiple companies, you can upload your DNA to GEDmatch and create what's known as a super kit, which is multiple of the tests all put together, because each test will have SNPs they're testing that none of the other ones are testing. And so then it adds all those together, and then you end up having, I don't know what it is, but maybe it's like 750,000 SNPs, or who knows? I don't know exactly. The funny thing is I actually see for the future of genealogy, it's going to start going the other way, where we're going to start seeing tests have fewer and fewer SNPs. And that's going to be for a variety of reasons. The biggest reason is going to be because of artifact testing, and also hair testing, even more specifically, rootless hair testing or hair shaft testing, which is starting to become much more common. So in the past, it was, if you had hair and you wanted DNA from it, well, you needed the root of the hair to possibly get it. Now they can do that without the root. But even more with artifact testing, that's, what it sounds like. If you have something that you want to have DNA tested of an ancestor that passed away, and that they touched it or did something, or, something where you're pretty confident there's going to be a good amount of DNA there, then you can try to get that tested. The number one thing that people do that with are envelopes, either the stamps or the, seal of it. Usually it's the stamps though, because the seal, once it's unsealed, it kind of loses its whatever. But, I think sometimes they can find something. But basically the idea is that the ancestor licked the stamp, put it on the envelope. It's been there ever since. And if they can break that down and extract the DNA, then they can actually get a profile. So, if you have a letter that your third great grandparent wrote and you think that they licked the stamp that's on it, and you get that DNA tested, you might be able to get a DNA profile for your third great grandparent. But the issue with that is that DNA is going to be highly degraded, and you're also going to be looking at low amounts of DNA. I mean, think about, for everyone that's done these DNA tests, if it's the swab, they have you send in 2 swabs and you're swabbing your cheek for a long time. If it's the spit, you fill up a lot of spit. They want a lot of DNA, because with only a little bit of DNA, there is a high rate of error, and there's a very high possibility that they can't find anything. And what's happened is they've found that by doing lower SNP testing, they can get viable profiles using this degraded DNA. And this is the work that I was doing in investigative genetic genealogy, working on the Kintelligence kit, which Kintelligence tests Kintelligence tests 10,230 autosomal SNPs. Direct-to-consumer tests like Ancestry and 23andMe test about 700,000 SNPs. But the thing with Kintelligence was we were able to start developing profiles with smaller amounts of DNA and more degraded amounts of DNA. And these were profiles that had been tried to be created with regular autosomal SNP array testing, doing the hundreds of thousands of SNPs. It was also tried with whole genome sequencing. But then for multiple cases, we were able to take profiles that couldn't be created with other technology and then create a viable genealogy profile with that. And this is something that is going to be, it's not going to be hitting the consumer market just yet. I think that I can't say too much because I don't know, what kind of limitations I necessarily have with stuff. But, I do know that the company that's developing it, Verogen/Qiagen/ the company that owns GEDmatch, they've been, they're the ones that developed it, and they're working with different labs in different capacities. One of those labs was the lab that I worked at, DNA Labs International. And so, that was one of the things was I ended up being the person that has the most solved cases and the most experience using these Kintelligence DNA results. So there, this is where I see the future of DNA going, is the tests are going to get smaller. So for one, the Kintelligence test, the SNPs that they choose are, I think what they used to call it, the non-coding DNA. I think they used a different term for it, but I think it was non-coding is technically what it is. But basically what it is they were focusing on finding SNPs that weren't medically relevant, because that was one of the big questions with having investigative genealogy and, law enforcement access to DNA and things is, a lot of people are worried about the insurance implications and, what happens with that. And so with the Kintelligence testing, that was a way of, okay, well, we can focus the testing with smaller results. And by focusing on non-coding DNA that doesn't correlate to, medical stuff, then that will allow us to, kind of rule that out as an issue, I guess you could say. So really, really long-winded answer to your question, but it just got me thinking, that's a really interesting thing to talk about. So I think eventually that will hit the market, and we do already see artifact testing available. So there's keepsake DNA and to the letter DNA that do artifact testing. And you can go to their websites and they talk about other items that, you might be able to find stuff on. But the thing with that is that there's a risk to it in the sense that, whatever item you send in, you're not getting back. So, if you have a cherished envelope from your third great grandparent, it's the only one you have. If it's going to be DNA tested, what they're going to do is you're going to send it in. They're going to basically emulsify it and then extract the DNA from that. Like, I don't know the exact process, but that's basically what they do is they emulsify it into like a powder or something so they can extract the DNA. And, because I think a lot of people, have this idea of like they carefully take some tweezers and a scalpel and slowly slice away the stamp from the envelope and all that. But no, really, they're just, they're cutting out the piece and emulsifying it. So whatever you send in is going to be destroyed. But also, I think there's a high rate of no results. Blaine Bettinger, I think, has tried a few times with these companies, and I think he said that he hasn't had any successful results. But it's been a while since I don't. Last time I talked to him, I actually I hung out with him and talked to him in person in London at the IAGGS conference. And I don't think I asked him about that, but yeah. So